The basement was quiet. The boxes they sat untouched for years. But as the zipper of an old suitcase slowly opened, the past just came rushing back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Today, Sheinelle Jones is moving with her 3 kids a year after her husband Uche Ojeh's death. And, well, what she found hidden in the dark changes everything we know about her story.
It really does.
Welcome to Starscope Report. Join us as we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And for this deep dive, our mission is to really look beyond those perfect morning television smiles and the red carpet photos.
Right.
We are exploring the multi-layered reality of a woman balancing profound, devastating grief with a massive career shift and, the intense demands of single motherhood, all while living completely in the public eye.
Absolutely. And I've been poring over the details of this story for you all. And the visual that I literally cannot get out of my head is the packing process.
Oh, yeah, the move.
Right. So she's moving out of this beautiful, picturesque Livingston Manor home. It's like over 4,700 square feet.
That is massive.
Yeah, sitting on 53 acres. It was basically their sanctuary, the place they quarantined in during COVID as a family. And now she has to dismantle it.
Which is just heartbreaking. It's been a little over a year since her husband of 17 years, Uche, passed away at just 45 from glioblastoma.
Exactly. So she's moving to be closer to a new school for their 3 kids. You've got 16-year-old Kane and the 13-year-old twins, Clara and Uche. But she's staring at these basement boxes that haven't even been opened since they moved from Philly to New York back in 2014.
A whole decade ago.
Yeah, and she was so drained, so fundamentally exhausted. She almost threw everything away blindly, just tossed it all out.
It's a very common psychological response, actually. In behavioral psychology, there's a concept we call avoidance coping.
Avoidance coping.
Yeah. When your cognitive load is just completely maxed out, when you are literally just trying to remember to breathe, feed your kids, and get to work, you just can't afford the emotional tax of making micro decisions about physical objects.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Right. Opening a box from a decade ago is a massive gamble.
Yeah.
You don't know if the thing inside is going to make you smile or if it's going to trigger a full-blown panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
So your brain just goes, throw it all in the dumpster. Protect the system.
Right. You compartmentalize the grief just to function. It's like we literally box up the painful, beautiful, messy memories and shove them into the dark just so we can survive a random Tuesday.
Exactly.
But eventually, to move forward, you have to open the boxes. And thankfully, she didn't throw them away. Her babysitter actually stepped in and essentially forced her to look.
Thank goodness for the babysitter.
Right. She told Sheinelle, no, we are going through everything. And when Sheinelle unzipped this one forgotten suitcase, she found her actual wedding dress from 2007.
And the detail that is so striking to me about that dress is its condition.
Yeah, it wasn't pristine at all.
No, it wasn't dry cleaned. It wasn't hermetically sealed in some, sterile preservation box. The bottom of the hem was still caked in dirt from when she and Uche ran around the streets of Philadelphia taking photos on their wedding day.
I literally got chills reading that part. Because if she had sent it off to be perfectly preserved, it would just be like a piece of white fabric.
Just a garment.
Exactly. But that dirt is tangible, physical evidence that the day actually happened, that she lived that joy, that she ran through those streets with the man she loved.
Yeah.
Facing that dress, dirt and all, it just feels like the ultimate metaphor, right? For having to face the reality of the life she had and the life she lost in order to finally leave that house.
Absolutely. Avoiding the dress is avoiding the grief. The dirt grounds the memory in reality. It forces you to acknowledge that this beautiful thing existed and now it is over. And, well, both of those truths can exist in the exact same space.
They really can. And navigating these kinds of deeply human, incredibly heavy stories is exactly why we do this show. So if you are loving these Hollywood twists and want to keep exploring them with us, make sure you're subscribed because we've got even crazier stories ahead.
Oh, we definitely do.
But the move is really just the aftermath. Wait till you hear the chilling 1 a.m. discovery that started this entire tragic journey.
Yeah, the inciting incident is, it's chilling, mainly because of how incredibly mundane it was. It wasn't some dramatic collapse.
No, not at all.
It was literally just a slight stutter during a high school tour.
To really grasp why that tiny stutter set off alarm bells, you have to understand their dynamic. I mean, their love story is something straight out of a 90s rom-com.
It really is.
It's 1997. They're at Northwestern University. Uche is a high school senior visiting the campus, just trying to find his way around. Sheinelle is this bubbly college freshman who just offers to show him where to go.
And she even teased him the day they met.
All right.
She told him his name would sound cooler if he just pronounced it Uche.
Yes. And from that random encounter on a college campus, they basically never went a single day without talking. So, fast forward to 2024. Uche is 45. He is a brilliant business consultant. He's a healthy, highly competitive soccer player.
Way super fit.
Exactly. They are touring high schools for their son. Uche raises his hand to ask a question, and he stutters.
And most people in that room probably didn't even notice.
Right.
But when you have shared a life with someone for decades, you know their cadence. You know their rhythm of speech better than you know your own.
So true.
A few nights later, at a different school, it happened again. And that tiny anomaly is what prompted Sheinelle to call a doctor friend from the Today Show, which immediately led them to get an urgent MRI.
Which brings us to the 1 a.m. moment.
Yeah, this part is just heartbreaking.
It's the middle of the night. Sheinelle is asleep in bed. Their youngest child had crawled in with her and was sleeping right beside her. Uche walks into the room. He quietly picks up their sleeping son and carries him up 2 whole flights of stairs, just so he wouldn't wake up or be in the room for what he was about to say.
Wow.
He comes back, hands Sheinelle the hospital paperwork, and just says, "I think I have cancer." The nurse's hands were shaking.
The contrast there is just devastating. You have the ultimate image of domestic peace, a sleeping child in his mother's bed colliding instantly with just life-altering terror.
It's unimaginable.
And to understand why the nurse's hands were actually shaking, we have to look at the mechanics of glioblastoma.
Right, the specific type of cancer.
Yeah, it is one of the most aggressive, fast-growing types of central nervous system tumors. The reason Uche stuttered is likely because the tumor was already pressing against the language or motor centers of his brain.
That is so scary.
It is. It infiltrates the surrounding brain tissue, which makes surgical removal incredibly complex and, often impossible to do completely. It is a diagnosis that literally changes the timeline of your entire existence the second you hear it.
And this is where my brain just short circuits. Because the very next morning, literally hours after hearing that, Sheinelle completely compartmentalizes.
She went straight to work.
Yes. She gets up, puts on her makeup, goes to the studio, and works on live national television. She is smiling and delivering the news to millions of people as if her entire universe hadn't just shattered. Like, how is the human brain even capable of doing that?
Well, it's an extreme form of psychological partitioning. For someone whose identity is heavily tied to their profession, the structure of a live television broadcast can actually act as a scaffolding when everything else is collapsing.
Oh, I see. Like a framework to hold on to.
Exactly. The teleprompter tells you exactly what to say. The director tells you exactly where to look. For those few hours, she didn't have to figure out how to navigate terminal brain cancer. She just had to read the news.
Wow. But they fought the cancer so hard behind the scenes. While Uche was going through these grueling treatments, Sheinelle was actually training for and running a marathon.
Which is just wild timing.
Totally. And Uche, who was intensely private about his diagnosis, would go out with her to support her. He was hiding his fresh brain surgery scar under a crooked blue baseball cap.
He was so dedicated to her.
He really was. He even threw her a party to celebrate her running the marathon, despite the fact that he actually suffered a seizure that very same night.
He was fiercely trying to protect his family's sense of normalcy. And she was literally running to prove that they could outpace this thing.
Yeah.
They were both just trying to muscle their way through it.
Which makes me want to pause and ask you something, because I've really been wrestling with this.
Okay, what is it?
We look at Sheinelle going to work and training for a marathon, and we call that being strong. But is society's expectation of resilience, like this intense pressure to keep going and push through no matter what, is that actually a trap? Like, does it stop us from being present with our dying loved ones until someone else explicitly gives us permission to stop?
I'd actually push back on the word trap in this specific context.
Okay, how so?
I think for many caregivers, especially in those early stages of traumatic diagnosis, that treadmill isn't a trap, it's a shield. It is a survival mechanism.
The shield. I like that.
Yeah. When your home life becomes a medical crisis, the routine of work or marathon training is the only place the world still makes sense. It provides an illusion of control. It wasn't a trap for Sheinelle, it was the armor she wore until it became too heavy and she was finally ready to drop it.
And it did become too heavy. I mean, you can't outrun glioblastoma. The physical and mental toll of caretaking is insurmountable. It actually took her co-anchor, Dylan Dreyer, stepping in.
Right, the dressing room moment.
Exactly. Dylan pulled Sheinelle aside in a dressing room, closed the door, and looked her in the eye and just said, "Go home. Go be with him."
Sometimes you need someone completely outside of the crisis to grant you the permission you can't grant yourself.
Yeah.
That intervention from Dylan was the pivot point where Sheinelle finally dropped the armor and transitioned into what she later called her beautiful nightmare.
That phrase, beautiful nightmare, it captures it so perfectly. When they transitioned to hospice care, they basically turned his room into a studio apartment.
They really did.
They closed the door to the outside world. They watched episodes of Ted Lasso. Their youngest child played with a soccer ball at the foot of the bed. They listened to praise and worship music. It was agonizing because they knew how it ended, but it was also profoundly safe.
Well, the psychology of hospice is deeply focused on reclaiming control in an uncontrollable situation.
Right.
By closing that door, she shrunk their universe down to just the people who mattered. For those final weeks, she didn't have to be a network anchor. The kids didn't have to pretend everything was fine for their friend.
Where hospital chaos was gone.
Exactly. They just got to be a family, fully present in the reality of the ending.
It makes you wonder how she ever went back to work after living in that space. And honestly, the decision she made next in her career, I mean, we need to talk about that because it is a massive gamble.
It really is a huge shift.
But before we get into this shocking career twist that nobody saw coming and the literal sign from beyond the grave that fueled it, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the way Sheinelle reconstructs her life after this is an absolute masterclass in betting on yourself.
Absolutely. Coming back from a loss of that magnitude requires a total reconstruction of the self.
Yeah, you can't just go back to normal.
No, you can't step back into the glaring artificial lights of morning television and pretend the nightmare didn't happen. The audience would see right through it. Sheinelle made a very conscious decision to, in her own words, fight for her joy.
And that fight led to a massive, unprecedented career leap. Sheinelle recently made the emotional decision to leave her anchor spot on the legendary third hour of Today.
Huge news.
Yeah. Her departure was incredibly tearful. You had Al Roker, Dylan Dreyer, and Craig Melvin all there. Craig Melvin actually wrote and read an original poem for her on Life TV.
Oh, that was so sweet.
It was. And she is leaving that established team to take a huge get on herself. She's moving to co-host the fourth hour with Jenna Bush Hager. It'll be rebranded as Today with Jenna and Sheinelle starting in January 2026.
You know, to really understand the magnitude of this shift, you have to look at the mechanics of the daytime TV landscape.
Break it down for us.
So the first and second hours of a morning show are hard news, right? You are reading teleprompters, doing interviews, relying on very rigid journalistic structure. The third hour loosens up a bit.
A little more casual.
But the fourth hour is notoriously personality-driven. Historically, it's Kathy Lee and Hoda, or Hoda and Jenna. It requires extreme vulnerability.
That's true. They share everything on that hour.
Exactly. You are essentially sitting at a table for an hour and bleeding your personal life, your opinions, and your raw emotions onto the screen. Stepping into that specific slot where authenticity is the only currency, right after experiencing a profound personal tragedy. It is an incredible emotional gamble.
It's a high wire act without a net. But I think she can do it because she connects with the audience now on a level that goes far beyond just delivering the news. She is now a member of what she calls the Widow Club.
The Widow Club.
Yeah. She received over 1,000 letters from people across the country sharing their own grief, and she actually sat down and hand-wrote 1,200 thank you notes in return.
That is a perfect example of what psychologists call in-group validation.
Oh, interesting.
When you suffer a profound, life-altering loss, it isolates you. You feel alien to the normal, functioning world. Often, clinical therapy isn't even enough because you feel like the therapist doesn't truly understand the specific texture of your pain.
Right. They haven't lived it.
Exactly. But finding a club of people who speak the exact same dark language of grief, that peer support is uniquely effective. It validates your reality.
And speaking of validation, there's this almost cinematic moment that happened behind the scenes. She gets this massive new job on the fourth hour, right? She's laying in bed that night, feeling the overwhelming weight of the moment. And she looks over at the empty space on the mattress where Uche used to be.
Oh.
She's desperately searching for his voice, wishing she could tell him. She ends up picking up an old, forgotten phone of his that was still in the nightstand, and she finds a text message he had sent her years ago when she was doubting her career.
Unbelievable.
It read, "Don't worry, you'll get your shot. God is in control."
It's serendipity in its purest form.
Mm.
It really speaks to how love leaves these tiny echoes behind. And what's fascinating is that she has been receiving these incredible affirmations of her worth from all corners of her life, not just from Uche's old phone.
Right.
It was the same energy she received during that viral Met Gala moment.
Oh my gosh, I remember that. It was the most chaotic red carpet in the world, cameras flashing, everyone screaming. And Rihanna, literally stops her progression up the stairs, looks directly at Sheinelle, and just affirms her existence.
It was a beautiful moment.
She told her, "You deserve to be poured into. And you're beautiful. You're a Black journalist. And I respect you."
Rihanna saw right through the microphone and the camera crew and recognized a woman who was carrying an immense weight. She gave her the exact validation she needed in a space where you least expect genuine human connection.
And feeling seen, really truly being seen, is exactly what Sheinelle is trying to do for her own kids. Because all of these career triumphs, the new show, the viral moments, they aren't just about television.
No, not at all.
They connect directly to her ultimate motivation, which is showing her kids how to survive the unimaginable. Which brings us to the quietest but arguably the most complex part of her entire journey.
Motherhood. And the reality here is simple but incredibly daunting. There is no template for parenting through trauma.
Done.
Sheinelle is navigating life as a single mother to 3 grieving teenagers. The cognitive load of trying to manage your own grief while simultaneously auditing the emotional stability of 3 different teenagers is staggering.
There's literally no playbook. She actually wrote a book before Uche passed called Through Mom's Eyes, where she interviewed the mothers of highly successful people to try and figure out the secret.
And what did she find out?
Her biggest takeaway: there is no right way to mother. As soon as you think you have the equation solved, the variables change. She shared a quote from her grandmother in the book that I honestly think every single parent needs to hear.
I love this quote.
Her grandmother said, "I'm doing the best I can with the light I have to see by."
With light I have to see by. That is such a profound framework. It completely strips away the toxic societal pressure of being the perfect mother.
It really does.
It acknowledges that your visibility is limited. You can only operate with the knowledge, the resources, and the emotional bandwidth you possess in any given moment. And Sheinelle is very self-aware about her limitations right now.
Yeah, she leans on her people.
She is open about leaning heavily on her village, specifically her Today Show co-anchors. When she needs someone to help her establish tough love and structure for the kids, she goes to Dylan Dreyer. When she needs heart and emotional guidance to navigate their feelings, she goes to Hoda Kotb.
But looking at all of this, the book, the new daytime TV slot, the viral celebrity moments, I honestly think Sheinelle's ultimate triumph isn't any of those public things. It's the invisible moments.
Tell me more about that.
It's the story she told about going to her daughter's dance recital. She had just gotten home from work. She was bone-tired, emotionally drained, and the thought of sitting in a loud auditorium just felt impossible.
We've all been there, but add grief on top of it.
Exactly. But she forced herself to go, and she didn't just stand in the back. She forced herself to sit in the very front row. Why? Because when her daughter looked out from the stage during her Lauryn Hill solo, Sheinelle wanted her to see her mother with wide, smiling eyes cheering her on.
Yeah, right there is the pure definition of resilience. Resilience isn't about bouncing back and being perfectly fine. It is the conscious, agonizing choice to swim through what she accurately calls the mud of daily grief.
The mud, wow.
The sheer effort it takes just to get out of bed, brush your teeth, and plaster a genuine smile on your face when your nervous system feels like it's under constant attack, it is monumental. Choosing to show up in the front row so your child feels seen requires a supreme act of willpower.
It really does. So what does this all mean for us? What can you take away from Sheinelle's story? As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a profound, lingering thought drawn directly from her experience.
Okay.
During those agonizing months before Uche passed, Sheinelle dealt with what experts call anticipatory grief.
Yes, anticipatory grief is when your mind begins mourning a loss before it actually happens. You start grieving the future you thought you were going to have. The graduations they won't attend, the retirement trips you won't take.
But Sheinelle realized she wasn't just grieving the big milestone moments of the future, she was grieving the mundane, annoying parts of their past. She found herself sitting there wishing she could just complain about him being picky about wanting chicken tenders for dinner.
Wow.
She realized that the friction of daily life, the petty grievances, the overflowing boxes in a basement, those are the ultimate privileges of the living.
It's a radical shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It forces you to realize that the things that annoy you the most about the people you love are actually proof that they are here, taking up space in your world.
Exactly. So I want you to ask yourself today, what mundane, annoying, or entirely ordinary parts of your life are you taking for granted right now? What petty complaint would you give absolutely anything to have back tomorrow if it suddenly disappeared? Think about those unopened boxes in your own basement. Are you ready to see the dirt on the dress? You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.